Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode on Shadow Space. I am your host, Laura. For all of my returning listeners, welcome back. As always, I really appreciate you guys and all of your support. And thank you for continuing to tune in and hopefully share this content with your friends, family, or anyone who may need it. And for all of my new listeners who are not familiar with who I am and my podcast, I am your host, Laura, and my podcast, Shadow Space, is geared to be a guide for all of those who are currently undergoing their self-development or healing journey or are on a transformational journey of some kind. So my podcast aims to be a guide, specifically to highlight certain aspects of the shadow and where I think the opportunity lies for many of us to make improvements and really accelerate our self growth and work on becoming better versions of ourselves. So that is my podcast in a nutshell, and I welcome you guys to my podcast. I post and publish weekly episodes, usually on Fridays. So I hope you guys continue to tune in and support this podcast. As well, share it with those who may need it, or if you find this content helpful for somebody specifically, it would be, amazing if you guys could share that with all of your friends and family. With that being said, I have a really awesome episode for you all today. Something that I've been reflecting on, especially around this time of year as we are officially wrapping up 2023. And the topic in mind today, and the topic that I wanted to dive into with all of you guys, is introspection. I think this is an essential part of, self-development. As we engage or embark on a journey of self-development, inevitably, we're going to come to a place where we have to introspect. And actually, what's really interesting is I wanted to kind of get the real meaning of what introspection is. And so I took the time to look this up, and it just basically states that introspection is the inward study of a person's thoughts and feelings. So an example of that would be, for example, if you introspect on your thoughts, things that may have happened to you or that are happening, and you observe yourself. And I always say it's always helpful to observe from a detached place, a place of non-judgment, because that's when we can make a really well-informed observation of whatever it is that's going on within ourselves. But it's also, observing the mental processes of what has been going on in your mind. Because as we all know, the mind continues to feed. And if we feed into the thoughts and the, processes that are going on in the mind unconsciously, we can tend to get absorbed with that. And also, kind of get lost in it and not really be able to understand it fully. So introspection apparently actually has a long history and focus, of teachings in the Buddhism, I wouldn't say religion, right? Because when we start to meditate, and I'm a big believer of meditation, one of the things is you get to a place where you look inward, and so that is what introspection is. It's the ability to look inside within you and observe what's going on. And through this process, we can see the patterns, we can see, the cycles, we can see the behaviors, we can see sometimes some of the unconscious things that we were never aware of. So all of that comes to light the more we continue on that introspection and go on that introspective journey. So I thought with the year ending, it's only fitting that we talk about introspection on today's topic because 2023 has been a year that has been extremely rewarding, but also extremely challenging in so many ways in my life. I am so grateful about the lessons that I've learned this year and continue to learn. It's also been kind of a rude awakening in certain aspects of my life. And with that, I've been able to sit with myself. I am currently still working, as you guys know, on my shadow. And this year, the shadow for me was highlighted even more than years prior. And it was an interesting process because once you start working on your shadow self, uh, you can see all of the things that are buried underneath the surface. And they don't always have to be things that are painful or hurtful or things that are, not in your best interest. Sometimes it's also things that you repress, such as ideas or, fears of going after things that innately within yourself that you want to go after, but you repress and suppress that because there's a fear there of maybe fear of failure. Maybe it's the fear of success, even, and that was what was interesting for me because mid-year, I was kind of doing some shadow work and I realized there was a question that I was kind of toying with in my head as to what was really holding me back from launching this podcast and starting my website and putting myself out there in my business and being of service to others. And one of the things that surprised me the most, and I said I would write the first thing that came to mind, it was the fear of success. And so that was so mind-boggling for me because I always thought it was the fear of failure. But once I understood that the fear of success is equally as great, if not even greater sometimes, I started to kind of unpack that for myself and say, well, what is the worst thing that could ever happen? What if you launch a podcast and it becomes a number one podcast on Apple or Spotify or wherever it is that I publish? So what? And I had to talk myself through the process of allowing myself to have that opportunity and trusting myself enough to know that I could handle that if that ever were to transpire. But it was interesting for me to highlight that because I think often what we think is, in the shadow aspect of when we're working in the shadow self, we often think of the worst things that are buried underneath. Sometimes it's the greatest things that are buried underneath that we just have to get to work through. And the only way we can get to access that part of us is by introspecting, by reflecting on the things that are there that we don't want to touch or we don't want to acknowledge or we don't want to ever think about because we always fear the worst case scenario instead of the best case scenario. So introspection is a very essential part of development. It's just one of the most critical aspects of evolving and developing and growing, because when you harness the ability to look inward frequently, and I'm not suggesting that this is something we do all the time, but if you develop the habit of being able to introspect, it will serve as a guide along your journey of just getting to that place that you ultimately are destined to get to, the better version of yourself, the visions that you have of yourself. So I wanted to really highlight that this time on this podcast because as the year comes to a close, or I should say to a close, and it was so close, it really, for me, it used to be all about resolutions and goal setting and all the things that I was going to accomplish, or reflecting on the things that I didn't accomplish. But I think for me now going forward, it's a time that I've allowed myself to introspect, to look at the things that went well for me, throughout the year, but also the things that I know I can do better, you know. And so I think when you develop the habit of introspecting, you start to reframe the idea of things going bad to things that you can do differently, because it gives you the ability to remove the mask and see right through things, but also gives you the understanding that you can do something about those things. You do have the ability to make change if you so desire. I always like to say that because I think everyone wants change, but sometimes we don't desire it enough to take the steps necessary, or better yet, to continue on that journey of change and sustain it, because change doesn't happen automatically. There is an action step that you take in the direction of change, but you have to be able to continue on that path and sustain it. And so by introspecting, you can really see where you have the ability to affect change, that you're not hard locked into a situation, or you're not hard locked into a story. You don't have a doom and gloom, outlook of life, but there are opportunities that you can see clearly and then choose to do something with it or something about it. But either way, you are empowered through introspection to really see the things that you want to make change about, and really take the actions necessary. So it's really a critical tool to be able to introspect. And one of the ways that I have discovered, and I've actually also researched, is that one of the most powerful ways of introspecting is journaling your thoughts and feelings. But the most effective introspective, I should say, method for me has been meditation. Meditation is far more impactful, in my perspective, than anything you can ever do for yourself. And I will elaborate on meditation because I am extremely passionate about meditation. And I want to really spend some time talking about meditation from my perspective, from somebody who does practice meditation, not as frequently as I'd like, but that does value the power of meditation. So I will definitely come back here and give you guys my perspective of meditation on one of my episodes, hopefully soon. But by far, it's been the most powerful tool I've used for myself to introspect. And there are many other ways to do it, but I think those are some of the most, prominent ones that come to mind right now. So journaling is a great step. If you guys like to journal, write exactly how you feel. In fact, I was practicing this yesterday, and I started to notice certain patterns in the way I was writing certain things. And I started to kind of connect similar words that were repeated in different exercises I was doing. And that was really powerful for me because I started to see kind of where my focus is and what I see and how I, interact, in certain situations based on some of the words I was writing. And so journaling is extremely effective. But again, meditation, if you can meditate, everybody has, there's certainly ways to meditate, but I definitely have my perspective on it, which again, I'll share with you guys. I think it might be helpful to get started because I think it's important to demystify meditation. Many people, I think, get caught in the idea of meditation being something that it really isn't. So I will really spend the time that is needed for meditation on this podcast, because I do really believe in it. And I think there's such an amazing benefit from it for your mental health, for just your overall emotional health, and your inner self. So I don't want to say too much about it, even though I keep bringing it up, but I will really dedicate the time needed for meditation. But so some of the tools that I mentioned, journaling, meditation, and other ways to introspect are extremely helpful. But I think it's always important to get to a place where you take a hard stop and take a look within. It's not necessarily looking back, but it's looking within. I mean, how do you feel? How are you? What do you think? How has life been for you? Some of these questions are very important, because we have such a mindless way of living that we can just continue to go and never check in with ourselves. And so I think introspection really gives you the ability to get in touch with yourself from within, to say, let me really dig within myself, which is actually also the only way to really connect, in my perspective. It's the only way to really connect to your truth, because nobody feels what you feel but you. Nobody knows what you're going through but you, right? And so when you introspect, you can come to a clear understanding and have a clear connection to what it is that's going on within yourself. And so that becomes your truth. And that is something that, is very valuable, because when your truth is highlighted, then you can definitely see where you need to make change or not. Again, choice is always yours. But I really wanted to make sure that I talk about introspection, especially at the end of the year, where everybody's so ready for the year to be over, which again gets me it gets me every time, because it's like, we really don't need the year to end in order for us to make change. You can really choose to make change right here, right now, today, at this very moment, but somehow I think we've been fed this idea that the year has to change, or the month has to change, or the date has to change in order for us to start fresh. Listen, I don't buy into that stuff anymore. I used to too, believe me. The idea of, turning the page is always great, because it's like erasing everything and moving forward and cleaning the slate and starting over. That's extremely appealing. I was a huge believer in that, until I realized that my life is really in my control. It's really in my hands, and I am the driving force of this life that I want to live. So therefore, I don't buy into the idea of having to wait any longer. I think change is important anytime we decide to make change. But, introspection is always a good time to evaluate everything. So at the end of the year, now I like to really just think about what it is that has gone on in my life, how I want to proceed, and what can I do about it? Because I am empowered to do something if I want to do something. And hey, maybe you don't need to do anything. Maybe you need to do more of something that has been great for you. And that's also very valuable and extremely powerful to introspect on. Perhaps you were the lucky few this year, where the year was smooth sailing and everything was beautiful and everything was abundant, everything was amazing. And maybe you need to really continue on that track and introspect on that and be grateful about that. Hey, why not, right? So introspection to me is not always about finding problems or finding things that are wrong, but it's more so about finding the truth of what is going on within you and bringing light into it. Kind of the same concept as the shadow, right? Like I always say, the light cannot exist without the darkness, and the darkness doesn't exist without the light. So same concept here. If we don't know what is going on within ourselves, it's nearly impossible for us to want to do things differently, or to even know where to start, but also to really know what we want to change. So I think introspecting is really, really amazing for that. So hopefully this has given you guys some insight into what introspection can do for you. And hopefully this was valuable and insightful in some way and helpful in some way to you all. And I really encourage you guys, as the year wraps up, to really take a moment for yourself. Celebrate, right, your achievements, your accomplishments, and the things that you've been able to do in life up to this point, but also really acknowledge where you need to continue to maybe do things differently. And so I think introspecting is an essential part of that. So I really encourage you guys to take, even if it's just 5 minutes for yourself, to really introspect on those ideas and see what comes up for you. So see what comes up for you. You might be surprised, you might be delighted, or you might say, okay, here we are, and here's the truth, and here's what we can do about it moving forward. But I just wanted to really share this with you guys, and I really encourage you guys to continue on your path and really know that you are empowered to make all the changes that you wish and that you want and that you deserve in the world. There are so many amazing tools. And as the year comes to a close, for me, introspection will be a big part of my story and how it ends this year. And then hopefully, based on what I uncover, next year will be extremely just incredible, because, when things are highlighted, we can only go up from there, right? So I wish you guys an amazing, amazing new year. And I wish you nothing but abundance, joy, happiness, and success in all that you guys do this year, next year, and for the foreseeable years to come. I wish you guys nothing but just amazing opportunities and the gifts that come from working within yourself and working on yourself. I really hope you guys reap all those rewards for years to come. And I really, really appreciate you guys for continuing to support my podcast. And I know I have some amazing topics lined up for you guys in 2024. And we're just going to take this to the next level. So with that being said, I want to leave you guys here. And again, I wish you an amazing 2024. And as always, love and light, peace and blessings. And I can't wait to see you in 2024. And go out there and spread your light. Okay? All right, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.